Have you ever felt that icy drip of fear right when you're about to ask for something? Maybe a raise or a date, even just, a small favor. That immediate dread of hearing that one little word, no. If so, you are definitely not alone. That fear, the fear of being turned down, of rejection, it's one of the biggest things holding us back. It shuts down opportunities before we even say a word.
It really is like an invisible wall, isn't it? And what we're going to unpack today, this idea, it doesn't just sort of chip away at that wall. It fundamentally reconfigures it. We're talking about rejection therapy. And it's a pretty surprising, counterintuitive way to think about self-improvement. It asks you to actively seek out that no every day.
Yeah, it sounds almost like reverse psychology, but like on yourself, for your own fear. So this deep dive is built around insights from excerpts of rejection therapy, conquering fear, building resilience. Our mission really is to get into why rejection hurts us so much, how facing it on purpose can become this kind of superpower almost, and what the source material tells us about building real confidence by doing the exact opposite of what feels natural.
Exactly. And what's really revolutionary, I think, is how this practice, which sounds pretty uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
How it promises to lead to some really profound personal growth and can even open the door to unexpected yeses. It's all about flipping your whole perspective on something that usually just paralyzes us.
Okay, so if we're diving in, let's start right there. What exactly is rejection therapy? What makes it so different?
Well, you kind of hit on it. Most self-help stuff, it's about avoiding discomfort, right?
Yeah.
But the core idea here is that real freedom from that fear of rejection, it comes from intentionally embracing the no. So it's a technique, yeah, but also kind of a social game designed to help you desensitize yourself, to turn that feeling of dread into just, information, a stepping stone.
And it has a pretty interesting backstory, too, doesn't it? Where did this audacious idea actually come from?
It does. It was first thought up by a Canadian entrepreneur, Jason Comely, back around 2010.
Oh.
But it really, really took off, went global. When Jia Jiang, a Chinese-American speaker, did his famous 100 Days of Rejection Challenge, his TED Talk, his book, Rejection Proof, they just exploded. And they showed millions how fear limits us and how, facing that fear head-on unlocks this huge confidence.
It's amazing how one idea can resonate like that globally. And I think part of it is just how personal that fear feels. So let's dig into that. Why does hearing no hurt so much? It feels so personal, even when logically you know it probably isn't.
Yeah, that's where our sort of deep human wiring comes in. The source material shows that rejection actually triggers a primitive survival instinct. Our brains, they're wired for ancient times, being cast out from the tribe back then. That essentially meant death, so that, no, it taps into a really deep evolutionary fear, like a primal alarm bell in our amygdala.
Wow. So it's not just feeling bad emotionally. It's literally hitting the same pain centers in the brain as like a physical injury. That's wild.
Exactly. The brain doesn't really distinguish much in those first moments,
Wow.
which explains why that fear feels so powerful, so visceral. And it gets rooted in us for all sorts of reasons: social conditioning, maybe low self-esteem, past bad experiences, or just, overthinking things, spinning out worst-case scenarios.
Okay, so given how deep that fear runs, the solution, rejection therapy, it still sounds so counterintuitive. What's the actual goal here? The audacious goal that drives this whole thing?
Well, the aim is actually beautifully simple. You intentionally try to get rejected on purpose every single day. And by doing that consistently, you're essentially reprogramming your brain. You learn, okay, rejection isn't fatal. You learn it's often not about you. And maybe the most surprising bit, sometimes rejection can actually lead somewhere good, an unexpected win, a new opportunity. The really profound thing is realizing confidence and courage aren't just things you have, they're skills. Like a muscle, you can build them up.
Right. So for someone listening now, maybe thinking, okay, I'm intrigued but terrified. How do you actually do it? What's the daily routine look like?
Yeah, good question. The material lays it out pretty clearly. Step 1, set a goal. Commit to trying to get rejected once a day. Maybe start with 30 days. Then step 2, the actual challenge. Make what they call an unreasonable ask. So asking for something you normally wouldn't dream of asking for. Something that has a really high chance of getting a no.
Okay, unreasonable asks. Give us some examples. What kind of things are we talking about here? I bet some are pretty funny.
Oh, they definitely can be. The sources mention things like asking a barista for a random discount on your coffee, just out of the blue. Or maybe asking to try on some super expensive jewelry in a shop, making it clear you have zero intention of buying it. Even something simple, like asking a stranger if you can borrow their umbrella when it's, perfectly sunny outside. The key is the ask should probably get a no, but it needs to be polite. harmless.
Right. Polite and harmless. That seems important. And after you work up the nerve, make the ask. What happens then? Just soak up the no and walk away.
No, not quite. That's step 3, and it's crucial. Record your experience, whether you jot it down in a journal or maybe even film yourself like Jia Jiang did. Reflecting on it is vital. Ask yourself, how did I feel before? How did I feel after? What did I actually learn from that interaction? Was the outcome what I expected? That reflection piece, that's what turns a potentially awkward moment into a real lesson.
Okay, it still sounds incredibly uncomfortable, I won't lie. But the potential payoff, the benefits you mentioned, they sound huge. What are the actual rewards people see from doing this?
The transformation can be really significant. First off, you get desensitized to the fear. It works a lot like exposure therapy in psychology. That emotional sting of rejection, it just weakens over time. You also see a real boost in social confidence. You just get more comfortable starting conversations, handling those slightly awkward moments that used to maybe shut you down.
And what about handling actual failure or things just not working out? Does it change how you view that?
Absolutely. That's where the increased resilience comes in. Failure stops being this paralyzing event. It becomes, well, normal. Maybe even a bit funny sometimes, just part of life. And that naturally leads to greater risk tolerance. You become much more likely to actually ask for what you want, the raise, the date, pitching that business idea, whatever it is, without all the usual hesitation. And then there are those surprising wins. That's the real aha moment for a lot of people. Sometimes people actually say yes, and it just shows you the power of asking. You often miss out simply because you never asked in the first place.
Jia Jiang's 100 Days of Rejection. I mean, that really brought this whole idea to the masses. His stories are just incredible. What were some of the most memorable asks he made?
Oh, his journey is full of these fantastic, sometimes pretty absurd moments, like asking a total stranger if he could play soccer in their backyard. And they said yes. Can you believe it?
No way! In their backyard?
Yep. Or, maybe even bolder, asking a flight attendant if he could make the welcome announcement on the plane.
Seriously, what did they say?
They said yes to that too. It's amazing. But then, of course, there were the definite no's, like the time he politely asked for burger refills at a fast food place.
Burger refills? That's brilliant. Just the audacity of asking.
It really is. And it perfectly highlights his main point. The fear of rejection is almost always worse than the actual rejection itself. He found most people are actually pretty kind, even when saying no. The social fallout we imagine, it rarely happens.
And another guy who started it all, Jason Cumley, he even made a card game, right? Which sounds like a clever way to make it less daunting.
He did, yeah. A deck of 100 rejection challenge cards. It gives you a sort of structured way to practice. Examples from the game include things like asking a stranger for a high five, asking for a free coffee somewhere, or even asking someone if you can cut a line. It turns something scary into more of a game, a manageable challenge each day.
And even without the cards, you can just brainstorm your own ideas. The source material actually gives some great suggestions, kind of broken down by category, which I found really helpful.
It does. Socially, you could try asking someone for a compliment or asking to join a conversation between strangers, maybe asking someone out. Professionally, think about asking for that raise, pitching a wild idea in a meeting, asking a mentor for feedback on your resume, and then in public spaces, maybe try singing out loud for a minute, asking for a behind-the-scenes tour somewhere you don't work, or asking to speak on a stage for 60 seconds. Really, the possibilities are endless. Just depends on your imagination and what pushes your comfort zone a little.
So let's get into the science a bit. What's actually happening inside our heads, in our brains, when we deliberately put ourselves through this? What's the psychology making this shift happen?
Yeah, this part is really fascinating. Rejection therapy aligns really well with principles from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. CBT has long used exposure to discomfort to treat things like phobias and anxiety. And essentially, rejection therapy works by kind of rewiring your amygdala. That's the fear center in your brain. You're teaching it to stop seeing rejection as this massive life or death threat.
So it's not just a mind game. You're actually physically retraining your brain's response.
Exactly. It's neuroplasticity in action.
Yeah.
That's the brain's amazing ability to change and adapt based on experience. Through repetition, you form new neural pathways, literally. And these new pathways start to replace the old automatic fear responses with more confidence and calm. It's a physiological change that happens with practice. You become fundamentally less reactive.
Yeah. Okay, so clearly this is about deep personal growth, rewiring fear. But we should probably clarify what rejection therapy isn't, because I can see how people might misunderstand the goal.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
It is absolutely not about being annoying on purpose or inappropriate. It's not about making other people feel uncomfortable just for the sake of it or, crossing social boundaries deliberately to get a reaction.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not some kind of game to manipulate people. The true purpose is entirely internal. It's about building your own emotional strength, your comfort with discomfort. The actions are external, but the focus is inward. And always, always done with politeness and respect.
Right. So for anyone listening who's feeling that little spark, thinking, okay, maybe I could try this, how do they actually start? What are some practical first steps?
The advice from the source is definitely start small. Don't leap into asking the CEO for their parking spot on day one. Begin with really easy rejections. Asking for extra napkins at a restaurant. Asking if a coffee shop has any free samples or cookies today. Simple stuff. And always, always stay polite and respectful. Kindness just makes the whole interaction smoother for everyone, even if the answer is no.
And that recording part you mentioned earlier, the reflection, that seems really key to actually learning from it.
It really is. Keep track of your progress. Journaling, vlogging, whatever works for you. It creates accountability, helps you see patterns in your feelings and the outcomes. And this might sound weird, but try to celebrate every rejection. Each no means you actually did it. You took the chance. You stepped outside your comfort zone. That in itself is a success. And finally, try to be curious, not defensive. If someone says no, maybe you can politely ask why sometimes. Not always appropriate, but sometimes you learn something really interesting from their reason.
Yeah, I think many of us get stuck on those automatic fears that pop up. What will they think? This will be so embarrassing. How can we push past those when we're starting out?
Right. Those are common, like the fear they'll hate me. The reality, people are usually much kinder or at least more indifferent than you imagine. Or the fear, I'll be so embarrassed. You have to reframe that. You're learning. You're experimenting. It's not about failing. It's about gathering data, building a skill. And the big one, what if I get yelled at? Honestly, that's very rare if you're polite. But even if it did happen, well, that experience also helps build resilience, that thicker skin. The vast majority of times, it'll be neutral or maybe even surprisingly positive.
And just as a final dose of inspiration, it's worth remembering some of the most successful people we know faced absolutely massive rejection, right? It definitely didn't stop them.
Oh, absolutely. Think about Walt Disney.
Yeah.
Fired from a newspaper job early on for, get this, lack of imagination.
Wow. Disney. Lack of imagination.
Right. Or J.K. Rowling, rejected by, 12 publishers before Harry Potter finally got picked up. Oprah Winfrey told she was unfit for TV news. And maybe the most famous example in sports, Michael Jordan, cut from his high school basketball team. The lesson from all of them is crystal clear. They didn't quit. A no didn't define their potential. And it doesn't have to define yours either.
Wow. This whole deep dive really shows how rejection therapy can completely flip the script on fear, turn it from something that paralyzes you into something that actually frees you.
It truly does. When you stop being terrified of hearing no, you don't just become more resilient. You genuinely open yourself up to a world of possibilities that you were probably blind to before. Every single rejection becomes, like we said, a stepping stone, a building block for real confidence. And it paves the way for those unexpected opportunities that only show up when you actually dare to ask.
It reminds me of that powerful Gia Jian quote. Rejection is not failure. Rejection is redirection.
Exactly. So thinking about all this, what hidden yeses might be waiting out there for you? Just sitting there, beyond the no that you're currently too afraid to risk hearing. Maybe just consider one small, slightly unreasonable ask you could make today. And then think, what do you really have to gain by just giving it a shot? What's the worst that happens? And maybe more importantly, what's the best?